welcome to a new series of design videos. This is for PGA Tour 2K21, so we've just got the new game, and the first thing I wanted to focus on was the changes really that have happened with this designer, how they might affect the courses that you're making, the courses that you're porting or bringing across, changes you might want to make, and that's my videos are really going to focus on the strategy, the hole design elements, how you might want to go about designing holes differently, and changes that you may want to make, may not, but really with this video it's going to be the 5 things that I think you need to bear in mind most of all. And the course we're looking at currently is Marlette Fells. This is one of mine, won the rookie design contest last year and has been ported and is ready to play in 2K21. We're also going to look at another one and we're going to compare and contrast different things, because there's certain elements that work really well on one and slightly less well on another. One of them is very much a 2K21 course and is ported really well. One of them is very much a 19 course that is going to be really challenging in 2K. So I've got 5 things, like I say, that I think we really want to bear in mind. And the first thing that I think is there are 2 major changes, I would say, and they really incorporate the full swing for me. So we're going to zoom around here and you'll notice, first of all, graphics wise it's looking crisper than ever, and that's going to be something that other people will really cover. From a hole design point of view, we're going to leap back to the first hole here, and you're going to see a tee shot where we've got a big centerline bunker, we've got a par 5 opener, and the first thing that I think we really want to talk about is the swing variability. You'll have seen by now with people playing the game that actually you can hit the ball left, you can hit the ball right, it's not straightforward to just hit it dead down the centre. And what we used to do to get around this in 19, a lot of us, was really make the centre of the fairway tough, or you were going for really narrow fairways. Often we'd be going, well, we know that options are a good thing, so have a bunker. You can either hit it over or left or right, or you can lay up short. You've got your choices. I don't think we have to do that as much anymore. We can be placing hazards off the side of fairways and they'll be in play. We've seen that with an ill-timed slow or very slow, you could be way off. So we don't need to rely on these crutches anywhere near as much, and that's going to be a huge change for designing. Now, this hole's still pretty wide and it's a par 5, so I think it works. That's why I haven't really changed it since porting, but there was one hole, if we leap over to 15, I did change completely. I took out, there were 2 centerline bunkers, one here, one here. Instead you've got a waste area that is kind of carry as much as you want. The further you carry, the better angle into the green. So you can see that it's a slightly different strategy, and it's a better hole. Generally it's a more natural hole that makes more sense. So the second thing that kind of brings me on to it, I guess, with this hole, is one of, we've now seen that you can choose clubs in your bag, you can chop and change. You could have a driver, you could have that goes 284, you could have a driver that goes 274, you can have one that goes 295. Maybe the 295 one carries this, maybe the 284 one goes to here, maybe the 274 one just has to bunt up this way. In terms of what does that mean for you with your designing, well, you have to be really appreciating more how different people will play the same course, because different people at the same skill level might have a different bag setup, and if you're basically bringing the fairway in purely at 284, then that's not going to work so well. What I think it does take us away from really helpfully is just sticking a bunker down at 285, which is where the old driver used to carry to, and calling it a day. We no longer have to do that. We can have hazards that some people can carry and some people can't, and I really wouldn't want people to test that. I don't want you thinking, oh, I've got to play test with this club and this club and this club. Just put bunkers in sensible areas, put hazards in sensible areas, cut fairways in good areas, and you'll see that the hole will play much better. So I think the 2 major changes we've seen so far, and things that I'd want people to bear in mind: width, afford lots of it, so that people can have an off-tempo swing, and they might have a tougher approach in. This is tougher than this. You see that bunker on the right is far more in play from over here. but they've got a shot. We've got to allow a bit more freedom. It used to be, let's say, an average of TGC Tours in 19 would have been 30-yard wide fairways. Let's now go, I don't know, 50, 45. The number's up to you, and we don't know the meta yet. We don't know exactly where we'll end up, but consider far more width than you used to. Another one that we're going to look at, and we're going to leap into another hole, and we're going to say, well, what happens if you miss the fairway? We've said that missing a fairway is more likely. Well, let's put ourselves in that heavy rough. Let's see how that works. I'm going to go to pin 1. We've just missed the fairway. And we've got 189 yards. Okay, TGC 19, that's fine. We'll just hit a 1 iron out of there and it's going to be fine. No longer. We're at 67% to 74. Well, you're going to have to be thinking, if you're making the heavy rough in this game is really penal. So there's no chance I'm making that. Well, where can people lay up to? Is the layup straightforward? So in this case, yeah, I can reach up here with no problem. But are you making sure in your design that if people miss the fairway, have they still got a route to the hole? Now, if I really wanted to, and I kind of want this to be a tougher course anyway, I'd have removed this bunker and given a bit more of a way to the green so that people could smash up here and maybe roll on the front. But that would be changing the hole pretty significantly. But that would be something I'd want people to think about a lot. And I think one of the things that we really need to see more of is people being allowed to bounce the ball into the green and land it short and roll it on. I'm going to come to that a little bit more later. So exiting out of this one, the next thing, and I'm going to go to another course in a bit and show you another example. The next thing I'm going to talk about is greens, and the game as a whole has just gotten harder. One of the holes that I showed you earlier on was this one, the 11th at Marlette. It's a short par 4, 397, and in actual fact it's only about 330, 340 to the green. Now this is what I would term a TGC 19 green. You're basically, this green is there because people could stop it on a dime. People could hit there and roll down, and if you wanted to get a little bit over aggressive, they'd roll down further, and we had runoffs everywhere. I mean, this course was entirely based, not entirely, but in part Pinehurst, so I wanted those turtleback greens. But I think what you found is these greens getting really segmented, and you can see this one, like, you've got a perfect shot or bust to this pin. You're either going off, you can kind of roll it down there, and if you went down here you'd have a backstop into it. So there was, I think it was a well designed hole for the game, but for the game that we've got now, where misses are so punitive and more frequent, this is going to be really tough. If we look at the next hole, you see kind of the similar thing. Look at the slopes we've got. Very little of that is green, and that brings us on to another point. We now no longer have just red, yellow and green, and if you're aware of designing for TGC Tours, you'd know that there was this 9-box rule where any yellow within the 9 box was an illegal pin. That no longer exists, and we don't yet know what is going to be replaced by. What I would suggest though is that you don't really put pins very close to orange. I think this is about as close as I would go. The ball just reacts really weirdly. This pin's maybe a little bit dicey, but my view on this was, well, you've got a sand wedge into a very short par 3. You should be hitting your mark, and you should be punished if you aren't. That was always the premise of this hole. But I do think this green is dicey. It's really tough and it's really punishing. And if I were creating a course from scratch now in this design and knowing this game, this green would not be one I'm making. But I kind of wanted to keep the integrity of it. And again, we're going to look at another green later on just to show a bit of variety with that. So yeah, let's go over to that now. Now Marlette, I do believe, is a really nice course and it's a lot of fun. It's just tough. So the next course I'm going to look at is one where we talk a bit more about width and all those options and those sorts of things. And so far I've gone through four of my 5 things. I think the variability in swing, fasts and slows, and what you need to do is provide more width to people off the tee. The fact that you can carry hazards at different distances is a major one. So let's say this bunker at the 300 yard mark, but down 30 odd feet from the green. There are going to be some people who can just hit straight over this. There are going to be some people who, even with a downwind, won't necessarily clear that. So that's now interesting. But you'll notice that the design here is generally pretty good. If you can't carry that bunker, well, you can still lay up short of these ones. You can try and squeeze it through here. You can try and go right of here and go close to the water, and that actually does give you the best angle in. But it's risky. But we need to be thinking more of this, and maybe not relying on the central bunker to make this sort of strategy work. One of the things, my first one was width, and let's imagine if you're going to hit a slow or a fast, how much width are we giving people? Now, Kaiuma is my favourite course I've ever made, and it's ported in 2019 in 2K21, so go and give it a go. But we've got 95 yard wide fairways, and I believe the 17th, I think, gets up to 150 maybe? 125. Was it 2? I don't know. There's some very wide fairways here. So people have all of this space in which to use, and you're giving people a chance to get around and not feel like they're hacking out of heavy rough, because if you go in the heavy rough on a hole where you've got 90 yards of fairway, that's kind of on you. However, how do you then make that interesting? Well, you want to take your biggest hazard, which is here. The guys with the longest driver will be able to carry that with some risk, and they're going to get the best angle into that green, avoiding that mound and getting at that pin. Or this one. The further right you go, the harder that shot comes in. You're aiming more at the cliff. You're running down that slope. You are taking this pin. Well, we'll come back to that pin. Taking this pin completely out. So I kind of want people to go into more realistic course design. We have this, and where it's like you can either go here or here or here or here or here. Like, there's options, but it's kind of segmented. If you look at this hole, it's more a case of this is an awful hazard. But I get the best reward from going as close to it as possible. How close do I want to go? You've also got a slope that allows people to get down there without necessarily taking all of it on. If you hit into this area, you're going to funnel down. So that sort of design, I think, is where I'd want us to go. But again, someone who's playing a fast downswing, well, you're giving them enough room. Imagine if this fairway was this wide. Are they really going to aim over here in order just to hit there? It becomes a very tight tee shot, and 30 yards doesn't look like that much. Add on another 20, well, people will happily aim down this part of the fairway, knowing if they hit slow, they might be on the very right edge. If they hit fast, they're probably about here and maybe funneling down. You're giving people a bit more room to play with. And no doubt we as a community will get better at playing this game in due course anyway. We looked at greens on Marlette. Now, we looked at a short par 4. Here's another short 4. So this one is 284, I believe. But look how much more green space there is. Now, part of that is because the green speeds on this it's published at what I would term as 157s. Now, some people may not know the terminology, but that basically means if I were to hit the putt as far as I could, if you look up here, it goes to 157 feet. Now, this in the old game would have been really, really slow. Because they've really improved the putting mechanics, this actually plays really well now. And on a Linksy style course, you can go even slower than this. And I think you're going to see far more courses played and published at this sort of level, because they just play better. So we no longer have to design for the 187 greens where everything's maxed out, because we know that's tricky and that makes the physics work. But on that green, you'll see how much more space there is. The green as a whole is more cohesive. It's less parcelled up. I mean, this is the course I did after Marlette, so a lot of that was reacting to things I thought I hadn't really nailed as well. But this pin and this pin are on the same sort of level, but play subtly differently. Same with this one. You've still got red slopes to add interest, and they really do. They make this whole play brilliantly. But it's more playable, I think, in this game because it's less severe, and I guess that's really the main message with this. The final one I wanted to look at, we're going to look at my favourite ever hole designed in game, which is the 4th at Kaiuma. It's a drivable par 4. I'm going to talk about ball physics. It might not seem like a major thing, but the ball is bouncing and rolling much better than it ever was. Now, therefore, rather than just putting a bunker down and thinking about where people are going to land, we can now think more about where they're going to carry to, but bounce to. And the bounces are less predictable. It bounds and runs all over the place. So we really want to be designing in more like this. And this is a hole which is designed purely on playing into areas. You can drive the green, or at least you could in 19, but you had to hit to this sort of an area and funnel it down. With wind you could carry it all the way there, but it depended. If not, you wanted to think, well, what area do I want to be in? If I want to be in here, do I want to get there by hitting straight at it? Or do I want to funnel off this slope? Do I want to play up to here roughly? How's the ball going to react when it lands? If I hit up here, I'm going to bounce down to here, and then suddenly I've got a pitch to a green that all flows away. Again, you notice the green, look how much pinnable area there is, but look at the slopes that give interest. So we'll finish up by having a little go at this and seeing how it goes. I think I've just put in the really long 295 yard driver, so the odds are that actually in this game with this driver I can try to carry it pretty much all the way, but that entails a huge amount of risk. So again, it's not the way I necessarily anticipated it playing, but because the principles are sound, it's worked really nicely. So let's give this a go. And I think that might be over. Needs to kick hard left. Yeah, it's not quite gotten down. And now, because again the principles are what they are, the whole concept was about playing into areas. Even though it's a different shot that wasn't doable in TGC 19, I'm still on a really tricky position and struggling, even though I'm only 13 yards away from the pin, struggling to get up and down for birdie. So those are my 5 things I think that I would see as the major changes in how we design. The first one being the fact that swings are going to go further laterally than they ever have done, left and right. So we can put bunkers in places we couldn't really put them before and have them be effective. Secondly, vertically, there's more variety. You can have different clubs. You've seen how I've just hit that drive to somewhere I never could do before. Thirdly, the greens. Publish at slower speeds, give more pinnable area. Putting is trickier. Don't trick up the greens in the way that we needed to. But keep adding interest. Like, look at the pin positions. You've got one here, you've got one down here, you've got one up here, you've got one here. Think about how differently they play. But while the green is still really cohesive. Heavy rough. If people are missing the fairway, let's nip out of this and just fly around while I'm talking. If people are missing the fairway, are you punishing them fairly? Do they deserve as much punishment as maybe you would have given them in the old game? So, and then finally, think about rollout. Rather than just, can you carry this hazard? It could be, well, could you roll into one? Look at these 2 bunkers. Potentially, if I'm hitting a 3-wood and I don't want to cross the river, am I going to bounce into that? So, and I believe lots of this stuff, if you understood course architecture anyway, not much of this is going to be new, but it's going to allow you to design in a way that really maximises some of these things in a way that we haven't done before. And none of this was saying that Marlette is a bad course and Kaiuma is much better. Kaiuma has ported to this game in a way that I wish Marlette could have done. This is based on width and angles. Marlette's based on execution. Execution in this game is tougher, so the kind of penal school of architecture, like you either hit this shot or you don't, is going to be tougher. So yeah, that's the end of this one, and we're going to go into doing a little bit of a series where I break down some of those things in more depth, and I'm also intending on going through one where it's what sort of things do I want to bear in mind for a dogleg, for a drivable 4, par 5s, medium, short, long, etc. and going through those sorts of things. But I hope this has been useful. Do leave a comment if you found it useful. Do go and play the course.